Hey there folks, Rel here. Today we'll be reviewing the Light Assault's Flashbang Grenade and the Heavy Assault's Concussion Grenade. Both are similar in that they are meant to incapacitate your opponents, but they vary wildly in application and functionality. That said, I figured it'd be fun to review both of them in the same video. So before we jump into the specifics or strategy, let's look at the similarities between them. Flashbangs and concussive grenades are both going to cost you 75 infantry resources per use. Both will affect allied units as well as yourself, and they'll also affect max units. Their explosions go through line of sight, so they ignore walls and cover, and neither of them have hit markers. Now, flashbangs can be used to prevent whole waves of enemies from attacking, whereas concussives are meant more to incapacitate much smaller groups. You can also safely use a concussive grenade from a much closer range than you can a flashbang because of the differences in area of effect and detonation mechanisms. That said, they go very well with the strengths of each class, so let's take a look at some specifics. We'll talk about flashbangs first because they share some basic mechanics with other grenades in the game already, and if you want to just hear about concussion grenades, you can jump to that part of the video by clicking the link in the description below. Like we mentioned before, flashbangs are available specifically to the Light Assault class. They'll cost you 75 infantry resources per grenade and cost 200 cert points to unlock. They throw like most of the other tactical grenades in the game, so they're a bit heavier than your standard frag, making them much easier to position. They detonate a second and a half after they make contact with the surface, so a wall or a floor, but they won't just air detonate after a certain duration. At its strongest point, the blinding effect is going to last 6.5-ish seconds, but you'll start being able to really see again at about 5 seconds, and we're going to call this the effective duration. The area of effect is very large, but it tapers in effectiveness the further you are away from it, so enemies further from the explosion will still have to deal with that same 5-second effective duration, but they won't receive as much blindness as someone closer to the impact would. Enemy maxes are affected by the flash, but infantry vehicles will not be. And unlike Counter-Strike or Call of Duty, facing away from the flash grenade will make no difference in how it affects you, so if you have your back turned to it, it doesn't matter, it affects you the same. If you ever wind up on the receiving end of a flashbang, your entire screen will go white. You'll be able to see anything that's marked like enemies or terminals, but even so it's pretty disorienting. At further ranges, it's still a bit of a surprise, but probably won't help you out too much. Since the big patch came out, they've added a sound effect to the flashbang. It's pretty obnoxious, so you'll know when it goes off. Something that hopefully they'll fix in the near future is that the sound isn't positional. In other words, if you're within earshot, you're going to hear that a flashbang went off, but you'll have no idea where in relation to you it happened. Now, the sound effect is a really good start, but what's lacking from this grenade and many others are proper hit markers. Right now, it's pretty much a guessing game to determine how effective your grenade actually was, or if it even did anything at all. Even so, it is pretty easy to tell if enemies are affected by your flashbang if you can see them. Naturally, people who are affected by a flashbang are going to act kind of strange, so either they'll be moving backwards from where they think the attacks are coming from, or they'll crouch in place, or maybe they'll even start running into a wall as they frantically try to find cover. A standard frag grenade you can just toss and run, but with a flashbang you need a little more planning before you throw it, because the biggest downside to using a flash grenade isn't the lack of hit markers, it's not the fact that you can blind yourself or teammates, it's the distance you have to cover after the flashbang goes off in order to make good use out of it. That said, let's talk about some basic strategy. I'm not going to be overly strategic here because I'll probably be doing some class build videos later that showcase more specific tactics and aspects of each class, but to get you thinking, here are a few different ways you can use a flashbang. You can use it offensively, so purposefully disorienting enemies so you can kind of run in and mop them up. You can use it to completely stop enemy pushes and give your allies a chance to charge in while they're at an advantage. And you can also use it defensively, so if you're being chased or if you want to take a better positioning, you can kind of just toss it behind you and then create that distance. But regardless of your intention, flashbangs are a very effective tool for the Light Assault class thanks to their superior position capabilities. To use a flashbang proper, you need to first figure out where the bad guys are. After you do that, take up a position that's going to keep you out of the flashbang's radius while giving you enough time to close the gap between you and your enemies. And selecting a single target is a smart, reliable way to use flashbangs. So trying to blind a general area can be useful, but if there is a priority threat like an enemy anti-infantry max, you want to make sure that he's the one that's most blinded. This will let you get close enough to drop some C4, and enemies nearby won't be able to react in time to take you out. And learn to gauge distance. It sounds obvious, but a flash grenade is extremely easy to misjudge the radius, especially when you're trying to close that gap, make up that distance. So if you're a bit closer to your enemies than you want to be, throw the flashbang behind them so that they get blinded but you're still mostly clear. The flash may not be as useful as it could if you hit them right in the face with it, but it's still going to be more useful than blinding yourself along with the bad guys. For the heavy assault class, concussive grenades are a completely different animal. They'll end up costing you the same as the flashbang, so 75 infantry resources per grenade and 200 cert points to unlock. As far as I'm aware, concussive grenades are the only grenades that actually detonate on impact, and this is likely to make up for the relatively small area of effect. Unlike flashbangs, the effect doesn't taper off the further you get from it, so if you're in the area, you're going to eat the full duration. And if you are in that area, you're going to be concussed for about 5 seconds. Anyone affected by a concussion grenade is going to face a ridiculous movement speed penalty, but more importantly, they're going to have a very, very hard time turning and aiming. More so than the flashbang, concussion grenades are a death sentence for anyone caught in the blast radius. With this grenade as well, there aren't any hit markers, but it's a lot easier to figure out who is effective because it detonates on impact. As far as strategy goes, the concussion grenade is primarily used to help you clean out a room. So it's a little more difficult to use them for escape maneuvers since there's no delay on their explosion, and the area of effect and visual effects are just too small to be useful for bigger team pushes. But unlike flashbangs, concussion grenades don't need a plan to be used properly. They're just so controlled that if you see something you want to die, you just throw a grenade at it and make sure you don't get caught in the blast. So some tips. Enemies won't be able to turn and face you easily, so you just step to the side a bit to avoid those stray shots, and then they're pretty much easy pickings. The window of opportunity is only 5 seconds long, so using a weapon with a quick time to kill is important. Automatic shotgun immediately comes to mind. In close quarter situations, throw the grenade at the wall or the floor behind the opponent. It's absolutely crucial not to get hit by one of your grenades, because then you'll just end up on a level playing field of suck. So why would someone decide to use a flashbang or concussion grenade over your standard frag? Now, frags are cheaper, and usually they'll end up racking you at least 1 kill, but the potential and versatility of these tactical grenades will go well beyond what a frag is going to do for you. If you're in a stalemate at a biolab, you toss a flashbang and then allies follow up. The tide of battle instantly and drastically shifts. If there's a group of enemies who refuse to die, a concussive grenade is going to give them no other option. Sure, so in bigger battles, frag grenades might rack up a kill or 5, but enemies are still going to see that red grenade indicator and they'll know to run. They're still going to have flak armor that helps keep them alive, and most importantly, they're still going to have combat medics hiding in the back that are just going to bring their buddies back into the fight. Concussives and flashbangs solve these problems. They take a lot of practice to get down proper, and they won't work for every situation, but they're absolutely worth the certs and definitely worth exploring. So that's the end of the review. Hopefully it was interesting or helpful, and if it was, feel free to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about the channel. If you have any specific strategies or thoughts you'd like to share, please do that in the comments below, or talk to me on Twitter @RelPlays. Thanks very much, folks. Rel signing off.